Thank you so much. And it's always good to be back here to be your language evaluator. Uh, my job is to find the strengths and your weaknesses in your languages. And tonight I pay most attention on the weaknesses that you have made so that you can improve your language usages, because I know this is what you look for when you come here. I know you come here to improve your public speaking skills as well as your English skills. And that's why this club sets English as the major language. So before I go into the analyses, I would like to answer one question that was asked in the beginning. Because in the beginning, I believe that you remember that there was one girl who asked the question of how do I sleep? How do I fall asleep at night? And my answer to that question is I just don't drink coffee after 4 p.m. So it doesn't really matter if you are a lawyer or not. Just don't drink coffee after 4 p.m. and you'll sleep all right. Okay, so when it comes to a language in a conference, for example, this one, mostly we have to greet people. And there are many ways to greet people. We call those ways stock phrases when it comes to interpreting, which is my profession. So mostly we say nice to meet you when we greet people. That's okay. But do we say nice to meet you, audience? So instead of saying nice to meet you, audience, what is the more correct way to address to audiences or to members of the audience? Because if you put plural in the word audience, it actually means something else. For example, when you say that this TV program is suitable for younger audiences, it means that there are many sets of people, and each set of people is one audience. So the word audience refers to a group of people rather than an individual. So if you want to address to an individual, you refer to that person as a member of the audience. And similarly, there are also many English terms, English nouns that are uncountable. So when we use those nouns, we have to pay extra attention. For example, if you are really used to saying the word 建议, then mostly we count the number of 建议. For example, we have two pieces of 建议, right? But there are actually two terms in English that has the same meaning: advice and suggestion. The trick here is that the word advice is uncountable. So you cannot say one advices, two advices. You cannot say that. You can say one suggestion and two suggestions. But if you want to count advice, you have to say one piece of advice, two pieces of advice. Of course, I haven't encountered such an error tonight, but it just came across my mind, so I want to really enlighten you with this. Also, if a variety session master wants to divide people into groups, and if there are four or five people in a group, instead of saying let's put 4 or 5 people in a group, you can also say let's divide the audience into groups of 4 or 5. You can use the genitive form of and then put a noun in the back. The genitive form is pretty much usable in English. It's quite useful. Also, if you want to use hypothesis as a verb, you can either transform it into hypothesize, or you can just say assume, which is a much easier verb to use. And also, there are many terms that have the verb form and the noun form, and you have to really differentiate between the parts of speech. Because English is a very explicit language. It's unlike our mother tongue. Our mother tongue Mandarin is very implicit, so you can pretty much mix up everything together. Because when we speak in Mandarin, we don't really communicate with logic. We communicate with tacit understanding. 中文是一个靠默契沟通的语言. But that doesn't apply to English. English has grammatical rules. English is expressed according to logic. And logic patterns come from grammar. So really pay attention to the parts of speech. So if you want to make behavior a verb, you should say behave instead. And the good news for English users is that the English verb only changes once according to different subjects. For example, when you use a singular third-person pronoun, then the verb has to be added with an S so that the word-noun agreement is achieved. And if you have a chance to learn other European languages, you know that the verbs change with a much complex rule. So in a sense, we are very fortunate that we only learn English here. And also, language evaluation is not just about grammar. Of course, we come here to learn how to speak in public. And the trick or the tip of speaking in public is that it's best that you speak by your heart and from your heart. So oftentimes I see Toastmaster members who speak on the stage memorizing their scripts. Of course, it's okay that you write a script, but that can only be a guideline for you. It shouldn't be too absolute or too exact for you, or else you will be bombarded by the intensity of the memorizing, or probably you frame yourself in a fixed frame to an extent that you cannot, or you fail to express freely to the audience, so that the audience may find it very difficult to communicate with you. So in order for the audience to feel your sincerity, it's best that you speak spontaneously. Because when you speak spontaneously, you think and speak at the same time. And the audience may grasp the thought in your mind. And also, at a smaller conference room like this, a lot of people tend not to use a microphone, which is really not a good habit to adopt, because oftentimes you really are forced to speak in a much larger room. And when you speak at a much larger room, you cannot just yell. And even if you can yell, you cannot yell for long. Your throat is going to be torn apart. So adopting a habit of using a microphone is going to be beneficial. Also, as an interpreter, I urge you to use a microphone, because oftentimes the microphone sends the signal to the interpreting booth. And if you don't use it, the interpreter cannot listen to you. And oftentimes we just have to yell to the microphone, please hand the microphone to the speaker, please. We usually just say that in the booth. Okay, so okay, so also when you speak in English, you have to remind yourself that verbs in English have three moods: the indicative mood, the subjunctive mood, and the imperative mood. And for Taiwanese learners, the subjunctive mood is the hardest, because oftentimes you have to think whether or not this fact is a fact, or whether or not this statement goes against a fact in the past or in the present time. And if this statement goes against a fact in the past, then you have to use the past subjunctive. So you probably have to use the past perfect tense in order to deliver that you're saying something against the fact of the past. And so, for example, if apart from, or instead of saying if he won, you could say if he had won, for example, the competition, then he would have been the champion or something. You could say that. Yeah, just pay more attention to the tenses of verbs, so that you can express, so that the English audience would understand more what time frame you're referring to, what mood you're referring to. So that should be pretty much a bit of what I'm going to share tonight, and I thank you for y'all listening.